I'm just going to go right here and type in the dollar amount, so it pulls up all of the transactions that match that dollar amount. If I want to run a profit and loss report, I'm just going to go to this box and type in profit and run my profit and loss report from there instead of going to the sidebar. So pretty much everything I do from the search box. So I just jump around unless I need to go in and like run multiple reports. I also like to duplicate. So you can right click and duplicate tabs. It's just kind of a browser trick. So if you want to run reports side by side, that's how you would do it. And then you can drag them to the sides of your screen, theoretically. I always use a mouse, by the way. I hate the touchpad on my laptop, and that's what I'm using, so don't make fun of me. And you can put them side by side. How do I make this thing go away?
So you're just dragging and doing that?
You got an unhappy face on there.
Go away.
Made Shelly.
It'll find itself.
Oh,
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh, I hit that too. Okay. And then I can look at reports side by side. This little weird, I don't know why this button looks like this. I think it should look different. It should be like an arrow, but this is what collapses the left side navigation now. So you used to have to go into QB Labs and turn on the little arrow in every file so that you could collapse that. Now we have this hamburger. I don't know what is, I don't like it. It's my personal opinion. Nobody cares, but that's what it does. So that will collapse that and you can bring it back out. Something I really like about this new color scheme is some of these buttons stick better. So there's a little button right here that says back to report list, or if I were to quick zoom into this and do a customization, this back to report summary, see I just messed it up because I tried to log into more than one thing. The back to report summary or back to the parent report button sticks a lot better, which it didn't used to do. So if you customized a report, all of a sudden you couldn't get back to the report that you ran initially to re-customize it. So that's a lot better. And if you haven't used QBO a lot, then you don't really care about what I'm saying.
We all care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bank rules are probably my favorite thing. So between 9 a.m. and noon today, while sitting in the back, apparently typing loudly, my apologies for that, I was able to post a month's worth of transactions for 8 companies and file 6 DOR reports, mostly because I have bank rules set up. So when I go into banking for my clients, 90% of the transactions that come through all have a green icon that says rule next to it. I have rules for income. So here's a deposit, for example. I can go in here and set up a rule that says anything that comes in as deposit, record as a transfer from my cash drawer. And anything that comes in as bank card deposit, record as a transfer from my merchant service clearing account. Then if I'm entering 0 sales receipt summaries or whatever, those are posting to those 2 accounts. So instead of having to reconcile merchant account statements and cash logs against my bank account, I can actually reconcile those against their own registers and post super fast here in the bank screen. Does that make sense?
Are you able to add that on the fly, or are you just saying that you could set up a rule when you go to?
So the rules, so my whole approach with rules, if you have an existing client or a new client, it doesn't really matter, it's the same process. I duplicate the tab first, so I'm in the banking center, I duplicate the tabs. I actually think I have an article about this too that you can probably dig up and find. Here under the update button, there's this little drop down and it says manage rules. So this is where we go to set them up. And the key to being super fast with QuickBooks Online is to spend some of your life doing this for each client that you bring on so that you never have to do it again. So if you spend the first couple of months working with a client going through, like say you have 3 months of transactions to post, allocate an hour of your life to going through and creating rules for everything you can. I like to sort by payee or description so that you can see like what chunk do you have like that. So here I have, oh, these are spent, I'm going to get received. I'm going to sort this by received so that I can make income rules because they're easier. So you can see here I've got this Intuit payments and I've got these deposits. So I know this Intuit payments is coming from my merchant services. Because this is using QuickBooks payments, I don't really need to set up a rule for that because theoretically it would auto-reconcile. This one isn't because it's fake, so I don't actually have payment accounts to match with it. But I could go in here and say, okay, anything that contains deposit, and I just copy it from the memo here because this is coming from my bank statement. I can go in here to rules and set up a rule and say if the money in transaction on my Chase checking. If the bank text contains deposit, I want this to automatically go to whatever sales account, to whatever class. And this doesn't work for everyone. So this is for an example of where I use this is with one of my chiropractic clients. They have 6 locations. Everything is run and processed through their HIPAA compliant system. So I just have merchant service statements that come in, right? I'm only recording their revenue. I'm not managing all of their billing. Their medical billing is done by a different app. So for this, it works. Or if I was entering daily sales summaries and this were a transfer from another system. But for this, I can just record it as a sale. So here I can say cash deposit, and it can go to sales, or I can set it up as a transfer. So this is a deposit. I could also set it up as a transfer from like the cash drawer. And that's if I was using a zero sales receipt where I was recording those sales separately. Does that make sense? Yeah. Does anyone here not know what I'm talking about when I say zero sales receipt? Okay. Mostly do. And I actually have a thing that I could send out that tells you how to make a zero sales receipt. So if you want that, just write me a note on the back of your card or something and give that to me after.
Katie.
Yeah.
So when you're creating an account, why is it so mandatory that they have to have that second, like create an account and you have to choose again another.
Oh, so why do you have to choose the
that
account
drives
type?
me nuts.
It does, I know, right?
Why?
I hated that. So
is there a reason? Is it for tax software?
There is a reason. So what we're talking about is the account type. So because I'm lazy, I'm just going to type that in there. Account list. So this detail type right here. So you have your account type and then the detail type.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we have that is for the integration with Intuit Tax Online, which is now called ProConnect Tax Online or something. So that's actually line mapping that's based on your business type that you select in settings, and then this helps control where it spits those numbers into your tax form. And it is super annoying. So what I recommend, when you're adding a one-off account, it's not a big deal, but when you're setting up new clients, it's frustrating because you have to go through and tag everyone. We have templates that you can, I see your hand, I will call on you, I promise. You can actually go into QuickBooks Labs and set up templates now. So if you have, like say that you work in legal, like Gail works in legal, she has a standard chart of accounts that she wants to use across all of her clients. She can save that as a template. Mm-hmm. And then when she starts a new client, it just copies that template over. Mm-hmm. Another workaround for that, and what I would recommend for getting your template set up if you don't have it already, when you do a desktop conversion, desktop doesn't require that. And when you convert, it does it for you. So what I used to always do is I'd have blank templates for different types of businesses. And when I started a new company, I would load in my desktop one. So I would basically convert a file that had no transactions so that I could bypass having to deal with that. You could even structure your account in desktop if you wanted, if you have like an Excel spreadsheet with the accounts, because you can import a CSV into here, but you still have to tag all of those subs. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier now because if you pull it in without the subcategory, you can actually pick it on screen. You used to just get errors and you'd have to do it in Excel. Hence having the desktop template. But so it's getting better, but that's why it's there. Do you have a question?
What is sales receipt?
So a zero sales receipt, which I think I might have in this deck right here. So let me look and see if I have it in here, because if I have a picture, none of these things. Here we go, $0 transactions. Well, that's a check. That's not what I want. Okay, so here we go, daily sales summary. So a zero sales receipt / daily sales summary is basically where, can we make this bigger? Zoom in this thing. Does anyone know how to zoom in Adobe? Oh, probably this right here, right?
Plus button.
The plus button. Crazy. Who would have thought of that? Okay. So here's the daily sales receipt. Wow, look at that. Isn't that good quality? You can't see any of this, so it is a sales receipt. So basically, this is a $0 transaction that you would be recording to allocate your sales to different income accounts and whatever asset accounts. So Z-tape from a point of sale system, essentially. So I sold $500 worth of food and $200 worth of bar. We both know that would be reversed. X amount of merchandise, say it's like a bar, restaurant that sells apparel, and this percentage of it was collected as credit card, and this percentage was collected as cash. There might be, there's probably a line for tip clearing in there somewhere also, but if they're only making $700 a day, I'm sure that tip money is going somewhere else, and probably not recorded. So this basically equals 0, and what happens is upon saving, why does it keep making that? So when you save it, basically it's recording your income and it's posting those funds that you collected into those asset accounts. And then from there, you can use that other tool we were just talking about with the rules. When you record your sales receipt, you've got money in your cash drawer and you've got money in your merchant service clearing account. And when that moves into the bank, it's a transfer. So now we can reconcile our what is that?
Somebody,
Is that Zoom?
somebody in
Is that
that?
me?
No, I don't think so.
How do I make it not do that? Oh, look. Let's do that. Okay. Good. Sorry, guys. Does that make sense?
Zeroing up the receipt by distributing the money.
Yeah, and you're not making a journal entry. So you can do all that in a journal entry, but then you've congested your whole journal entry screen. If you do it in sales, now you have item mapping. You don't have item mapping with a journal entry. So that's kind of, points of using the sales receipt, item mapping, searchability. You can create one that zeroes out with like $1 in it, and you can set it to automatically create itself every day, which allows you to go through and see if one was missed very easily. So like I would train my clients to just use the template that creates itself every day. That way they wouldn't try to copy and accidentally override their one from the day before. I have clients, my clients are more like Gail's clients. Don't touch the buttons. But that's kind of the purpose of a $0 sales receipt. So. Yeah, if you're not using an integrated solution and you need to account for stuff. So I have a client that uses desktop point of sale, but also uses QuickBooks Online. They use point of sale for various features that they need, but they hate desktop. So we actually pull the Z-tape, the Z summaries, and the sales tax reports from point of sale. He sends them over to me, and then I enter their sales off of that. Once a month, though, something. Any other questions about a $0 sales receipt? Yeah? Okay. So from here, Shelly, how long do I have?
I forget. 1:30.
1:30?
You got 28 minutes.
Cool. So before I just continue rambling, I would like to just open it up to kind of what are things that you want to talk about. So people have like little barriers, like this is my one reason why I can't use QBO. But I will also say, if you just want to rant and don't want an answer, just don't ask me until I have alcohol in my hand after this. That way I can pretend like I'm listening.
I'm constantly getting requests for a classified balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a strategy in order for that to happen? 'Cause
Yeah.
it doesn't happen.
So
organically.
classified balance sheets by class in QBO don't work the same way as they do in desktop. And the reason for that is the way that source and targets are read in QB desktop is not the same as QuickBooks Online. So in QuickBooks desktop, you have source and targets, right? So like if you make a deposit, your bank account is the source and all the other ones are the target. In QuickBooks Online, every account that's hit is seen as a source. Does that make sense? It's either a source or I don't actually know if it's a source or a target. But you can get a balance sheet by class some of the time. So like you can run a balance sheet by class, you can produce it, but if you're reporting transactions a certain way that don't play nice with the balance sheet by class, then your balance sheet by class is no good. Like if you're classing AR and AP specifically, I found if I'm not classing AR and AP, I don't really have that many problems with the balance sheet by class. That's really the big one. Now, are you asking about like nonprofits that need that?
No, nothing like that. I just have, a client that has like 9 Menchie stores, and they kind of like to see the balance sheet the same way, and having just a separate bank account for each one isn't apparently good enough for the CPA. And I'm thinking, but this stuff is transfers as opposed to deposits, so there isn't even any place, or one or the other. So there isn't even any place to designate a class on the item.
Yeah, and the transfers are hard. So I've done like church books on QBO and been able to work it out to where we can get all of the reports we need with the programs. But those transfers, I believe they became 4-line entries instead of 2-line entries, which is always super fun, right? So yeah, basically I don't have a good answer for that.
Well, and the way I get around some of that is, I don't use transfer functionality. I use a
I don't
sum zero
intend to.
check,
Mm-hmm.
which is very similar to the concept of your sum zero sales receipt, in that you are creating a check that the amount on the check is zero, and then you're addressing the accounts at the bottom of the transfer, and you have a lot more ability to identify if it's, belongs to a class, if it belongs to, a particular client or customer. I mean, you've got all that functionality there. And the key to the whole thing is it's got to be zero.
Yep. And I agree with that. One thing to note with that also is it works really well, especially when you're the one managing the books, because when if your client is sharing duties with you and they go into reconcile and they're like, why is there a check on the deposit side? I'm going to delete that. And they delete it from the reconciliation screen because they don't understand why there's a check on the
I run
deposit
into
side.
trouble though where
I'll do a clearing account that they're not reconciling.
Yeah.
well, the
Definitely
problem is
safe
coming in
preference.
from bank feeds and it's calling it a transfer as opposed to an enter it. And it's like, maybe it's a matter of just
and
not
you can
letting
even
it transfer.
set up rules for that. So you can set up rules that says if you get this, transfer from check XX3178 or whatever the memo normally says, you can set it up as a check split out this way to these classes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Another thing you can do, which I saw an error in this since we did the color scheme change and I haven't checked it again, you can create a rule that's mostly blank that just applies to a checking account and only has a class allocation. So all transactions that come in from a bank account are automatically assigned to a certain class. But the last time I tried to show someone that, it didn't work.
I
Before
tried
that,
to do
too.
that once, it didn't work.
Yeah, so we can try it right now though.
Yeah, let's see if they fixed it.
And that's, again, one of those things that, let's see, class rule. So let's do all expenses. And let's say we just wanted to go to fund fee. Oh, I have to set up a name. Amount
Something's not quite right.
is greater than 0.
Ooh, that's cool.
That's great.
Yeah,
Well,
that's gonna
wait,
save some
let's-
time.
See if it's gonna work. Yes. Oh, look, it worked, and I haven't showed you, but you all think I did. So let's move on. No.
That's so cool.
Very
I've
great.
tried to do that a year ago, and it's like, because it seemed like a good idea. Somebody else did too.
Now let's see if we can get. Yeah, see this one didn't. Oh, it's because I set it for expenses, and that's it. Yeah, see, and it's not working now. But I've set it up to where it works before, and with the color scheme change, it's not working now. So great
Maybe
concept.
it will on new
I'll get back to you when it
transactions.
works again.
Yeah,
I'll write a blog about it. I'll email Shelly.
that's really cool.
That's very cool. Yeah.
And it might just be that the way I set it up before had different parameters. So I'll just have to go back and figure out where I got it to work and make sure that my parameters are the same. Also, another thing when you're setting up rules is do exactly what I just did to make sure you did it right. So if you set up a rule, don't post the transaction. So you're looking at this transaction, you want to make a rule for it. Make the rule, go back to this screen, refresh it, and make sure that your rule is only applying to the transactions that you set it up for. If you accidentally click something too broad, your rule will apply to everything. If you accidentally make it too narrow, it won't apply at all. So don't be in the habit of posting, well, let me make a rule for that so I don't have to post it next time. The process is make the rule, refresh, double check, and then post. And then the next time you go in to do it, you don't really have to do much. Also spend the first couple months when you're going through like the first month or two, clicking on these. So if it says rule next to it, it'll have a green box and you click on it and it expands. Double check yourself and make sure it'll have that rule name next to it, but you just want to go through and make sure that it's actually applying the way that you intend. You have a question?
Sometimes I have transactions where normally the rule that I have to change them, and then I get that message at the bottom saying we're going to change all of the transactions too. And sometimes it does, and I look at all my transactions and boom, change.
Yeah, it should pop up saying, would you like us to update the rule? If it's a rule. If it's a recognized transaction, that's a totally different thing. So that's QuickBooks helping you because it loves you and it wants to make your life so much better.
And you can't turn that off, that little message.
You can't turn off. So we're talking about two separate things here. So first of all, the rules, if it's a rule and you change it manually, it should ask you, do you want to change this? If it's green because it's a recommended thing, it says, hey, I've seen this 100 times. You usually do this. Let me help you. Like I have a client, they use time for payroll. Anyone here use time for payroll? Oh wait, they're in Portland, in Seattle. Never mind. They have 4 transactions that come in when they run payroll. The payroll portion, the federal tax, the state tax, and the invoice. And it will automatically just assign all 4 of them to whichever expense account I used the last time. So I go through and I change salary and wages, and it changes all 3 to salary and wages. And then I change one to payroll processing, and it changes them all to payroll processing. And then I change one to payroll tax, and I post the last 2 because they are both payroll tax. So you can't fix that. Unfortunately, you just have to deal with it because it's being helpful. That's what it's designed to do, is be helpful. So,
Okay, I probably didn't recognize the difference between a rule and recognized
yeah. So what you're probably dealing with is recognized transactions, not rules. If it's a rule, it will literally have a little green box next to it that says rule. You would have had to set it up the way that I just did. If it's green though, if it's just green and doesn't have that little box that says rule or match, it's recognized. And in that case, if 90% are one way, make the rule for it and then just manually change the 10% when they come through. If you can find a deviation in the bank text, because this is reading your bank text saying this is usually that. So if you have, my favorite is contractors. They go to Chevron, they put 70 bucks in their truck, and then they go in and buy soda and a can of chill, right? So over X amount of dollars, let's automatically map to fuel. Under X amount of dollars, let's put to owner jar, wherever it's supposed to go. Doesn't work so well with landscapers though, because they get small equipment fuel. That's a totally different thing. Don't do it with them. So is that helpful?
Mhm.
So recognized and rule are not the same thing.
So for credit card payments in your check register, and then it's feeding down, what's your best way to make sure that those aren't doubling up?
So the best way to make sure that those aren't doubling up is really just paying attention to the order you post. So if I go in right now and I have a credit card payment, which, are we in the credit card?
It's not me, it's the client.
It is the client. So you just basically, they have to know. So first of all, setting up a rule on one side. You only want the rule on one side, so that it applies the rule. It says, okay, this was a payment. And you can look and see which side does it clear on first, because they always are a couple days apart, right? So if you're paying from your bank account, it clears there first. Set up the rule there. And that rule, when they post it, it will make the transaction in QuickBooks, and then you have to flip over to the credit card account, and then it will match to that transaction that you posted. So what people will do frequently is they're saving the payment as an expense or a check instead of as a transfer. So it doesn't necessarily match up. They're saving it to like credit card expense account instead of mapping it to the actual liability account. Does that make sense? So they want to go in and post it, and then go to the other side and post it.
Happening with them, I'm always unraveling.
Well, that's what they pay you for, right? Some people just don't get it. Like I have one woman, she's amazing. She finally goes in and she codes all of their credit card expenses, but she's not allowed to touch the payments because she will always mess them up. And they have like 12 credit cards for one company. So it's like, you can code all the payments and you can post them for all of the expense transactions. Yeah, make the rule to say don't touch the payments. And it's easy for them to see, they're underfoot sides. Just don't touch that. Every time you touch that, you're going to pay me $50.
So are there any plans, and what precipitates this question is exactly what Stacey's talking about. Are there any plans to improve the permissioning in QuickBooks Online?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer. I would assume the answer is yes for plans. I've seen plans, but the level of like user management, user permissions is super broad in QuickBooks Online. So it's like all AR, all AP. I'm a huge fan of third-party apps. So it's like my go-to. I like things that are industry specific that solve the biggest need that they can have. And I really like that you can just sync the relevant accounting data back to QuickBooks Online for the accounting teams to use. So as far as user management natively, like we would do in enterprise, no, not even close. So if you're looking at user level management and evaluating, should we use desktop for these user permissions? And does QBO do that? The answer is no. QBO doesn't do it. Don't even waste your time looking. It doesn't manage users like that. You can do reports only users, the look but don't touch users. So if somebody wants insight, they want to be able to see it, but you don't want them to be able to touch transactions. You can do that. You can restrict access to payroll. It's just a lot harder. It's different. The way the modules are built in the system makes it harder, apparently, for people that know way more than I do about software building. They just don't have that. So it's not comparable in user management. Yes.
I have a situation where a current client is being bought out by a bigger company, and the bigger company uses QBO. And is there a way to put the select customers or select vendors in, because they don't need all the old stuff?
Yeah, so are they moving from desktop?
Yeah, so the current company's on desktop, and then they're being bought out, and this other company wants their customer list, their vendor list to be put into QBO.
Yep. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. What I would recommend, are they only bringing over customer and vendor lists?
I think so.
Yeah, if they're not bringing any transactional history, you can just import CSVs. So it's really easy to import information into QuickBooks Online now. You can bring in, if we go here to all lists under the gear icon, we can import lists. I don't know why I can bother taking these off. Okay, apparently they don't have it in here anymore. We have the button in the vendor center.
I've been able to.
So we have a drop down here, import vendors. And you can download a template. Now, if you're converting from desktop to online, let's pretend that we wanted to actually convert with some financial data, but we didn't want all the super old stuff.
Right.
Or you're going to convert to QuickBooks Online. Gail talked about file size earlier. You need to be under 350 targets. Also, whoever said 100 file fragments, I have never heard that in my life. I've always only heard 10, and I prefer under 7. So for me personally. Anyway, if you're going to convert, you want to make sure you're under 350,000 targets. That's not the MBs or the gigs. It's targets, and it says target there. That's how many times each account has been pinged, essentially. And you want to get rid of anything that you don't really need. You can always save that desktop file for reference, but the condense utility is your best friend. If you have a 15-year-old file, you might have to run the condense tool multiple times, because if you are trying to condense too much, sometimes it'll decide it doesn't want to play nice and just stop. But you can condense with year-end or month-end financial postings, and you can check the box to remove inactive list entries. So if they wanted to just bring over, the last year of data, they could run that condense tool, remove anything that hasn't been used in a period, more than a year ago, and then convert that to QuickBooks Online. A lot smaller, a lot more consolidated. They can still run year-over-year comparisons if they did the annual closing entry in the condense tool. I'm a big fan of that.
So I tried to import or export an item list from desktop, and then we couldn't do it. And I think Intuit said you can't use characters,
So
any of that stuff.
The item lists are a little bit different. So if you need to import information, the nice thing about QBO is it gives you a template for everything. So if you want to import products and services, you can go in here and we'll go here to import, and you can actually download the sample CSV, because some of this stuff you have to reformat. There's item types and things in QuickBooks Desktop that don't exist or exist differently in QuickBooks Online. So here you can download this with headers, and you can just modify. So you'd have your desktop report, figure out what columns match up, reformat it, and load it in.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, because we don't have, they're just, some things are just a little bit different. There was another question, yes.
Say you're doing a conversion, is there a way to reset it?
Yeah, you just redo it. So anytime you convert, it overwrites everything in the company. So you can't, if you're bringing anything over from desktop, it overwrites, it does not add to. Whereas if you import here, like if we imported in a CSV into the chart of accounts or item list or whatever, that adds to. Desktop conversions overwrite. You can also purge. So let's say you bring over desktop and you're like, I changed my mind, we're going to start fresh. You can actually purge the data as well, which just wipes out everything. Yeah, you just redo it. Another awesome thing, if you didn't know about this, if you haven't done a conversion in a while, we actually have a conversion report now. It's amazing. We used to have to spend tons of time teaching people how to do conversions and how to look for things that could go wrong. Now it spits out a report that says, here's how many accounts got brought over, transactions, open this, open that. Here's the ones that we think got weird. And it tells you which ones they are, and you just go right there and you just fix it. It's amazing. if you never went through the trouble of not having that, you probably don't care that much. But for everyone else, it's like the audit trail thing in QuickBooks. And now I can't say I used to have this awesome QBO pitch where like the audit trail in QuickBooks Desktop was like Hansel and Gretel through the woods finding breadcrumbs that you're never gonna, you're gonna get eaten by the witch. QBO is like a ship log where you can see exactly every single thing that everyone did, which I still kind of agree with. Back to the cleared question.
Oh yeah, cleared.
That just reminded me of that. So we were talking about that clear, well, shoot, I'm gonna have to find one. Register. Why we don't have the cleared check in QBO. But we do, which is why I was wondering, like, it doesn't show up everywhere, I guess.
I don't think I've ever seen one that's a cleared.
Yeah, so it used to be, does anyone remember the client collaborator tool when it first came out, where you could comment on transactions and chat back and forth in QBO? So that got a little bit better now, but for a long period of time, it wasn't available on all transaction types, which didn't make any sense. It just didn't. And it was a similar thing with the checkbox. How is this showing up? And I opened a demo account that's never been reconciled, so let's open a different one. I opened this new demo account because I thought it would have more recent data, but it doesn't look like anyone's played in it enough to accommodate me. So we're going to pull up a transaction and see if we have the cleared check. Another thing, because of the source and target issues, transactions that affect more than one bank account don't have a cleared check because the way that
Which account did the reconcile?
yeah, the way, whereas in desktop, it's the source account, right? Is it cleared in the source account? Since QuickBooks Online doesn't read sources and targets the same way, it's not able to spit that out the same way.
And that's where sometimes you see double entries, like double transfers. So that's why if you open it up, you go, oh, that's cleared, then I'll use that one as opposed to the other one.
I'm gonna
I guess
do
I
the
look at
naughty
the,
thing and put the checkbox in here.
yeah, I use the,
Doing it.
Terrible.
I do use the little green signs that you have. That, I mean, that helps.
So who reconciles their register by doing that?
No, I mean.
Better not raise your hand.
No, I see, those are the transactions that go through the bank. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so see, yeah, this doesn't say reconcile and it's a transfer. But what if I make a check? Also here, in case you didn't know, the C stands for tentatively cleared. That means it's checked on a reconciliation that's not complete. R is for reconciled. The little green boxes that love each other mean that it was downloaded from the bank, the ones that look like this. Let's see, okay, so this one's an expense.
There's two columns. Does anybody have any issues with the dates?
Yeah, see, this one doesn't show either, so I don't know. I'll have to ask the people that are smarter than me.
So on the registers, dates, it's the dates, I have to, let's say this year, I just want to look at this year's transactions.
Yeah, you can do
Then
that.
I know, and then I go out of it and I come back and it's like from 2014. I go, I don't want to see that much crap.
Yeah, so we have these also, have you used these filters yet?
Yeah.
So what's the problem with them?
So they're just not always it doesn't seem like they memorize them or like if I go out of it and come back into it, the date range will be different again.
Yeah, it
Is that-
resets if you leave it. But it should stay, if you're opening transactions up in this window, like if I just want to see, I don't know how far back this goes. So, say I just want to do November through today. I don't even know if there's transactions in there. Oh, look, there's one. So if we go in here to edit this, because of the way that it pulls the transaction down, it should bring us right back to where we were. So let's do something
if you
to
close
this.
it, then it goes back.
Yeah, let's do something to this and save and close. See, it'll save it there because I didn't, when they came out with the way that the transactions pull down, it saves where you're at, which it didn't used to. It used to just wipe the whole thing out.
Oh, that's good.
So maybe because these filtering features are kind of new, so maybe when they first came out, maybe it was resetting and now it isn't, and I just get to look like I'm smart because it is working right now.
Well,
It'd be nice if it took us back to where we just came from, to
that's
the
true.
bank feeds, for instance, or to the check register or whatever, instead of back to chart of accounts. Why is it default to go all the way back there?
It didn't, so no, it went right back where I just was. I just clicked a button. I just cleared the filter off.
Right, okay, but if you're in bank feeds
Uh-huh.
and you get out of you don't have the option to go back to bank feeds. It goes back to charter accounts. If you got
If
more than
you-
one bank going on.
If you do what? I'm confused. So what is it that you're trying to do?
Oh, so you mean if you go to the register?
Yeah.
And then you can't, because
You can't
normally the
it won't
account.
take it back to the
Yeah,
bank.
so right click, duplicate, or the accountant toolbox, new window. We'll duplicate the tab. Work in multiple tabs if you're doing multiple things. That's the best advice I can give you. Just do it in more than one screen. I try to never re-navigate from or back to the bank feed window and never have more than one open at once. Like when I duplicate this to make rules, the first thing I want to do is wait for it to load. Like if you're getting the spinning wheel of death, don't walk away to get coffee, because if you come back and you start working in the other, especially when you're reconciling, QuickBooks doesn't get it. I just almost made a really sexist joke about men, but I won't. Anyway, it doesn't understand what you're telling it, so you have to make sure you re-navigate so that you don't have two windows open at once that are going to compete with each other.
What's going on in the reconciliation where you can't select all sometimes, but you go into a different browser?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and like not lining up in the
accountant's
reclass
tools,
tool. Yeah, it drives me crazy. It's a video propagation issue with the browser, and it sucks. And I have no idea.
Chrome issue.
There's no. And it does different things to me on different computers. Like this is a PC, and I also have Chromebooks. And depending on like how many transactions I have in that screen, and like how fast my internet is, and which computer I'm on, it might do different things. So it's just the way that the data is propagating on your screen. It doesn't always do it, but it's super annoying, especially if you're reclassifying like 200 transactions, because you have to do them in chunks. Otherwise, you get lost. Like your checkbox is 10 lines under the line that's highlighted. I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
So.
But it's
No
not
issue though.
just, sometimes you feel like you're the only one that's happening.
Yeah,
It's nice
you're
to
not.
know.
Yeah, it definitely is a thing, and
The reconciliation's a little glitchy.
I know that they put out some updates to it. Like that screen that we just saw, I haven't actually used, because I don't know if it's because I don't have new user experience on my clients. I wonder if this one will have it. Yeah, see, this one has the old one, but that one that we were just in, when I clicked reconcile, the screen looked totally different.
So it doesn't look like that anymore, because that's what mine looks like.
The new user experience, so if you were to get a new QBO today and you were to go into reconcile, it has a new, it's like the side-by-side versus top and bottom thing on
Yeah,
desktop.
that's what I thought. Okay.
Dance moves.
So have you heard any issues about the PayPal stuff coming through?
Yeah, PayPal integration sucks.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a
If
client.
anyone has issues with PayPal, it sucks.
So I have a client that creates the invoice. Then her clients somehow pay through another thing, then that goes through PayPal. That creates a receipt.
Yeah.
So now we have a payment and a receipt, and then I have to go through when I reconcile, because it's double.
What do they do?
I don't know. I don't know what it did. I'm gonna have to
No, I
find
mean
out.
like what kind of business?
Oh, they do like a manufacture clothing, and they sell online.
I would just use they either need like an e-commerce management that will filter all those payroll transactions and make them pretty, or use something else.
Maybe.
Like PayPal integration is just not pretty. Does anyone here have a positive PayPal
No, I
desktop,
don't have
PayPal,
any.
anything QuickBooks experience as far as entering? Is that a yes, or are you stretching?
Yes.
Yes, you do have a positive?
Well, it took
PayPal
a long time to get to a positive, but yeah.
What did you have to do? You had to tweak it a lot, or?
Goats on a sacrificial mound.
And then you have to eat the baby in the cage. It doesn't count, if the process to get there is that painful, it doesn't count as good. Mixing it. Yes. Okay.
I have a client that when I run the report by class, he kind of wants it in specific order, the classes in specific order. And there's no way I found to sort by.
Yeah, the only way to do that is to like number them.
That's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, you can't drag them around.
Is that an area that QBO is working on, is the reporting, or are you going to acquiesce to third parties on that?
So our reporting module has gotten a lot better recently, as far as, it took me a while. I say better because I know that it's better, even though I liked the clunkier way, probably because I came from desktop and I'm used to that filter window where you're like, check, check, scroll, scroll, check. But I know that this is better because it just pops out on the side now. So when I say customize here, I just get this side thing. It's easier to see what filters you have. It's super easy to customize. So that's gotten better. Go away. It's just prettier in general. You can add notes and things onto these now. So it's getting better, but as far as like complex reporting, like consolidated reporting, stuff like that, third-party apps have all the bells and whistles. There are upgrades to this coming out still, but as somebody that has subcontracted with Intuit for almost 5 years, and Shelly can confess, you both know the Intuit answer to that is, we're working on it, it's coming. And I have absolutely no idea when. So I could tell you what I think, but then I could be wrong and you guys will be like, what you said. So yes, it's getting better.
Well, but sometimes they're just very straightforward and saying, we're not going to deal with that. That's
right.
Definitely.
And I will tell you that. I would definitely tell you that. So like balance sheet by class, I know that they're working on, and I know that they have been working on it for a while. So that's going to be there, obviously. Things like reorganizing the order of class columns, probably not important on anyone's agenda. Let's see. Now I wish I had more things that I could say. No, they're never going to do that. I don't know. All right, so I'm going to ask you another question. It is 1:30, yes.
The little chat bubbles that we get on the transactions, those are just on the checking, like on the banking transactions. You can't find it on credit card transactions.
That's what I was just talking about, the client collaborator tool.
Right.
I know.
They just show.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It makes no sense. But I will tell you something else. Along those lines. Along those lines, though, so that's a thing. It's been like that for years, and it doesn't make sense. However, that being said, oh look, this one's on here. Okay, so it's down here on the bottom. They moved some of this down. So the chat bubbles. Oh look, this is a credit card one. It's on there. Boom. Yeah, oh wait, this is an expense from a credit card account. So there it is.
So you're chatting to the client, right?
Yeah, so what happens here is if I choose my client name and I send a note, they get an email and they have a link that they can click to go into that transaction and look at it right from there. They suck at that. Really, it's just like you said something and you did your job and now you have something that says that you said something, because most people, they're like, oh, I clicked the link and then I didn't know what to do. So what was that question you had? I don't know. With updates to product management, hopefully in my fantasy world, we'll actually have a place where we can see them all. We used to have an activities area down here on the side that would like summarize those as well, but with the new color scheme update, I'm not sure what happened to this. It's now the spinning green wheel of death, not the spinning blue wheel of death. That's awesome. In case you haven't noticed. I keep asking for like a unicorn running around a circular rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
Use the feedback button. It's right here under the gear icon. And say we want a unicorn.
That's funny.
All right, are you guys ready to
It's margarita time.
drink margaritas? I guess Shelly's in charge.
Yeah, like 30 minutes.
Maybe.
Okay.
What do we do?
Yeah, so we are running out of time. We could do like one more question if somebody has anything.
Another question? Yes.
So in accounts receivable, maybe I'm just doing this wrong, but when you create an invoice and you've got the service date and then you have the date you create the invoice and you run a report on the accrual basis, it doesn't use the service.
Nope, it doesn't.
And there's no way to change
Nope.
that? Because that's
No.
like basic accrual accounting.
No, it doesn't do that. So yeah, the service date is like informational purposes only. So the invoice date is when it hits AR. So if you want to enter billable charges or billable expenses or enter them in some other way where they hit the AR account at a different date, you can do that and then add them to the add them wherever, whenever. So
how do you make it hit the AR?
So what are you trying to bill? Actually, we should talk. We're running out. I should just show you this after, but go ahead. We'll see if we can do it.
Let's say I did the work in February and I'm creating my invoice in March, and I want to show that it was receivable as of the end of February. How do I do that?
You make your invoice on the last day of February.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could also like use a custom field to have the invoice date be a date that they don't even see, but you see it, and we use a different field. We have to type in the actual invoice date that they're going to see. It's just a text field.
Yeah.
So
You can swap the fields out.
What's the point of the service date? Is that just information?
So the service date is informational only. If you were, It doesn't do, if you're not entering like charges against it. If you had things like billable charges, for example, those will hit a little bit differently depending on how they're mapped. Or if you wanted to make entries that went against like a pending AR account and they move to regular AR, it doesn't seem like a lot of fun to me personally. I would just make my invoice date in whatever month you want it to actually record in. So, all right.
All right, thank you, Katie. Just a couple minutes while we switch presenters. And